The moment Lewis Hamilton crossed the line in fourth place, the paddock gasped, reads the Whip-Smart headline. It wasn't hyperbole. At Imola 2025, Hamilton did shock the world. In the post-race press conference, the seven-time champion confessed that he had unlocked a hidden edge in the Ferrari SF25 with some bold setup and driving tweaks. Tweaks that made him measurably faster than Charles Leclerc. The revelation hit like a thunderbolt through the paddock. If you're an F1 fan who craves daily news and analysis, smash that like button and subscribe. We post fresh F1 drama every single day, so you'll want to stay tuned for every twist. Ferrari's weekend began in disarray. Saturday's qualifying saw both SF25s out in Q2, Leclerc P11, Hamilton P12. An unthinkable outcome in front of the screaming Tifosi. Rain and swirling winds only added to the chaos. Leclerc radioed in frustration, and Hamilton simply shook his head as he climbed out of the car. An uneasy silence fell in the garage as team principal Fred Vasseur stared at the timing screens. The team's championship hopes dented before a corner had even been turned. Behind the scenes, Hamilton had quietly lobbied for a radical change. The SF25's twitchy rear end had plagued the team, and Lewis was convinced they needed a different approach. He pushed the engineers to run his car much lower and stiffer than usual. Rear ride height was dropped by several millimeters, a bold move after his recent plank wear penalty, and the rear springs and dampers were stiffened dramatically to anchor the car in corners. He even asked for extra front wing angle to sharpen turn-in. It was a gamble, one the team almost didn't take, but it set the stage for Sunday's fireworks. Sunday dawned hot and bright. The Italian sun was baking the asphalt as the cars lined up on the grid, and the Tifosi were buzzing with red banners and anticipation. When the lights went out, both Ferrari drivers leapt off the line cleanly. Leclerc flashed past a rival into turn 1, and Hamilton tucked in right behind. The two were on a mission, ready to begin their charge. Lap 1 quickly proved Hamilton's pace. By the end of that opening lap, he had already gained a position, launching the SF25 through Tamburello with newfound confidence to dispatch a backmarker. The Ferrari sprang to life under his hands. By lap 5, Hamilton had slotted past Esteban Ocon at Rivazza with a perfectly timed inside move. Within 10 laps, he was already into the top 10, and his lap times began to tumble consistently. The crowd along the circuit could hardly believe their eyes as their seven-time champion roared past on the big screens. Then, on lap 29, the pivotal moment arrived. A virtual safety car was called for a stranded Haas, and Ferrari pounced. Hamilton dove into the pits for fresh medium tires, capitalizing on the neutralized race to leapfrog several rivals. The stop was executed to perfection. In the blink of an eye, Lewis's car was back on track, and suddenly he emerged not in 9th, but in 7th place. Strategy and pace in harmony. Hamilton was very much back in the hunt. When racing resumed, Hamilton was a man possessed. With brand new mediums, he hurled the Ferrari after the leaders. He may have lost a bit of top speed on the straights compared to the McLarens, but around every corner the SF25 was hooking into the asphalt like never before. Sector data would later show Hamilton setting the fastest times in both sectors 1 and 3, the high-speed sweeps, with only a fraction of a second lost in Sector 2. He carved through Tamburello and Variante Alta with brazen bravado, hustling the car through each sequence with confidence that stunned even his pit wall. One by one, overtakes unfolded like a thriller. First, it was Pierre Gasly. Hamilton lunged under braking at Variante Alta and swept past the Alpine on the inside for P6. Then George Russell found himself a victim of Lewis's momentum. A flick at the chicane let Hamilton dart around the outside and into P5. Next, Alexander Albon's Williams loomed ahead. But on the final lap, Hamilton performed a late-braking magic trick. Down the inside of Lesmo 2, he slipped past for third. It all led to the grand finale. Charles Leclerc, on worn tires and holding P5, had Hamilton bearing down on him in the final corners. Through Variante Bassa, on the penultimate lap, the two Reds raced side by side. Hamilton stayed low and brave, trusting that rock-solid rear grip and edged alongside. Screamed wheel to wheel as the Ferrari pit wall collectively held its breath. Then, with a flick of the steering wheel, Lewis edged ahead. The checkered flag followed a few corners later. Hamilton had clawed up to 4th place, just 1.4 seconds from the podium. He dashed into the cool-down room, face lit up, fist pumping through the window. "This one's for the fans," he shouted. dedicating the drive to the Tifosi. It was a historic moment, Hamilton's first ever home race in a Ferrari, and what a comeback it turned out to be. Enjoying the action so far? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We analyze F1 action like this every day. What exactly had Ferrari done to produce that relentless pace? In post-race interviews, Hamilton didn't hold back. He admitted that he and the engineering team had pushed the envelope on the setup, running the car far lower and stiffer than before. By lowering the ride height, especially at the rear, and cranking up spring and damper rates, they massively increased downforce in the fast sections. The rear of the SF25 planted like never before, he grinned, and they even ran a little more front wing to sharpen turn-in. The effect was astonishing. Hamilton said it felt like a completely different car in the high-speed corners. To break it down, Hamilton described changes on every front. The rear suspension was firmed up by roughly 10 to 15%, keeping the back axle planted under massive loads. The front suspension was softened a bit, allowing the nose to dive into turns. They ran the rear of the car about 5 millimeters lower than normal, a surprisingly low ride height on Imola's bumpier asphalt, while keeping the front slightly higher for balance. About 2 degrees of extra front wing angle were added, shifting downforce forward and preventing understeer. Even the tire setup was tweaked. The front tires carried about 1 degree more camber, and pressures were set roughly 1 to 2 psi lower than usual, keeping the rubber in the sweet spot through those long corners. Below is a quick rundown of the key setup changes Hamilton confirmed. Suspension, rear springs and anti-roll bars, approximately 15% stiffer, front a bit softer. This put the car in a locked-in state, resisting roll and rotation. Ride height, rear. Ride height approximately 5 millimeters lower than normal, raising corner load. Ferrari kept the front slightly higher to avoid scraping. Aero balance, added approximately 2 degrees of front wing. This shift in downforce forward countered the car's natural understeer with the new low setting. Tire camber and pressures. Front wheels got plus 1 degree camber, maximizing grip at lock. Tire pressures were about 1 to 2 psi lower around the car, stabilizing temperatures under heavy load. Brake bias, moved a couple of percent more bias to the rear. With the rear now so stable, Hamilton could lean on the rear brakes later into corners like Tosa without the tail stepping out. Each tweak on its own was subtle, but together they turned the SF25 into a cornering beast. As Hamilton later said, "Today I felt like I was driving a new car." The lap times backed him up. He was consistently over 0.2 seconds per lap faster than Leclerc in the long, fast sectors, sectors 1 and 3, completely reversing their earlier pace gap. In the twisty Sector 2, he was roughly equal to Charles, so those extra tenths in Sectors 1 and 3 were the real keys. In short, the car was suddenly eating up the long, sweeping corners that had been its weakness. If you're loving these tech insights, smash like and hit subscribe. We bring you every F1 story, every day. It wasn't only the hardware. Hamilton also changed his driving to exploit the new balance. With the car more stable, he confidently trail-braked later into every turn. At Imola, for instance, Lewis stayed on the brakes deeper than ever before, then finally picked the car up at the last moment, trusting the new setup to hold the line. He told his engineers over the radio he was letting the rear come around on purpose, and then smoothly rolling on the throttle. In a looser car, that maneuver would spin him out, but in this Ferrari, it just meant a faster exit. Through the fast Rivazza sweepers, he was similarly smooth. Instead of flat footing and burning the tires, Hamilton modulated the throttle on exit. This gentle control meant his tires never overheated. He finished that first stint on mediums, 29 laps, with almost zero graining, an unheard-of performance on these rails. By contrast, Leclerc, on a higher setup and older tires, was starting to fight severe overheating. On team radio, he complained his SF25 was sliding out on corner exits by the end. Hamilton's response was telling. Each lap Lewis turned in a lap, time as fast as the last, while Leclerc's pace dropped. In essence, Hamilton managed his tires like a veteran. His inputs were buttery smooth, keeping the rear tires in the ideal temperature window throughout. That tire conservation allowed him to switch strategy and still have performance. When he finally went for his second stint on fresh mediums, he was still flying, even catching the one-stop cars that tried to outrun him. It was driving masterclass. Adjust the car and adapt your style, and all of a sudden you can set the track on fire. By Monday morning, the shockwave had rippled through the paddock. Even Toto Wolff, present at Imola that weekend, was overheard saying, "That's classic Lewis. Turn a backmarker car into a rocket." Analysts pored over the lap charts. Hamilton's final laps were half a second quicker than anything Ferrari expected out of the SF25. One Mercedes engineer even texted a former Ferrari colleague, "Lewis just made your 2026 upgrade look obsolete." Inside Ferrari, excitement was uncontained. Mechanics and engineers were erupting with smiles at their timing screens. A team member laughed, "I've never seen Lewis's car look so quick." The mood in Maranello had flipped overnight. Minutes ago, they'd been panicked. Now they were celebrating. By contrast, in Red Bull's garage, there was newfound respect. Team principal Christian Horner cracked a smile. "He's always tricky, that one," he said of Lewis. "If Hamilton finds something, he'll exploit it. You can never count the man out." The bottom line? The chase for podium glory just got a whole lot more complicated. Verstappen may have won Imola, but now he has a new threat lurking in P4, a Ferrari rider armed with a secret weapon. Of course, the setup wasn't the only factor. Ferrari's strategists also deserve credit. Remember that lap 29 virtual safety car? Ferrari called Hamilton in instantly for mediums, stealing clear air. That undercut vaulted him ahead of rivals who had stayed out. The clever two-stop plan, banking on Hamilton's ability to save rubber, paid off brilliantly. Meanwhile, McLaren had taken a different approach. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri both started on mediums and gambled on a single stop. It nearly paid off as they ran to P2 and P3. Even so, Hamilton spent laps hunting down Piastri after his own second stop. That shows how strong the Ferrari changes had become. Lewis was effectively chasing a one-stopping strategy with an extra stop, and yet he was still on the attack for podium positions. Leclerc's race, by contrast, became a cautionary tale. He stayed out longer hoping for a miracle safety car, but it never came. By the time Charles pitted, he emerged behind Alexander Albon's Williams. On the final lap, Albon muscled past into P5, prompting Leclerc's famous radio lament, "What did I do wrong?" Ferrari's hopes of a 1-2 had evaporated, leaving Leclerc in P6 and Hamilton an unlikely P4. One more factor leaps out: tire wear. Imola's smooth asphalt still punishes rubber in those high G corners. Hamilton's setup and gentle driving meant he avoided graining. By lap 50, his mediums were still hanging in there. Leclerc, on the aggressive setup and older tires, saw his lap times fall off in the final stint. The data spoke for itself. Hamilton's pace on worn tires was straight-line faster than Leclerc's on newer rubber. In effect, the wheel and tire management completed Hamilton's comeback. In the end, the difference was as much mental as mechanical. Hamilton attacked the weekend like a man on a mission, the hunger of a rookie, mixed with the cunning of a champion. Behind his visor, he was practically grinning, and after each good sector, he'd pump the fist in the cockpit or flash a thumbs up on the radio. On air, he told his team, "It feels great out there today. Everything's working," his confidence palpable. Leclerc's mood could not have been more different. He started focused, but as strategy faltered and rivals closed in, his frustration grew. By the final stint, sources said he was almost hunched over the wheel, jaw set. His radio transmissions spoke volumes. At one point he sighed, "It's just sliding out," revealing his desperation. To fans watching at home, the contrast was crystal clear. Hamilton was flying. Leclerc was fighting for answers. This human drama lit up the storyline of the race, with one Ferrari roaring back and the other floundering. In the garage, engineers who had despaired of the SF25 were now beaming at data, while others pored over graphs trying to diagnose the losses. For one day in Imola, everything flipped. The veterans' gamble paid off in spades, and the young pretender was left chasing. All this Ferrari drama unfolded in the shadow of Red Bull's dominance. Verstappen comfortably took victory, a reminder that the RB21 is still in a league of its own. Hamilton's heroics at Imola trimmed the midfield fight, but he is still trailing the championship leaders by well over 100 points. In the grand scheme, this revelation is huge for Ferrari's season. It will lift morale and score important points, but it doesn't dethrone Red Bull. The bigger narrative remains. Ferrari has hope again, but they're still chasing the Dutch car in terms of outright pace. That said, the message to the rest of the field is clear. Hamilton's run proves that the SF25 has untapped potential. One wonders what that means for the remaining races. If even Charles Leclerc starts trying pieces of Lewis's setup, or if Ferrari's planned upgrades arrive smoothly, the fight for the podium next time could be an all-out war. In short, nobody in the garage or on the grid will be taking Ferrari lightly anymore. We've unraveled the mystery of Hamilton's Imola surge, but the story is far from over. Will Ferrari run this radical setup at every track, or was Imola a one-off miracle? Can Leclerc adapt and find similar pace to respond? What will Red Bull do in response? The paddock will be watching Monaco and beyond with a magnifying glass now because nobody saw this coming. So here's the million-dollar question for you, the fans. Is this Hamilton's championship season saver, or just a spectacular one-off miracle? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let us know. Remember, we bring you daily F1 news and analysis, so make sure you're subscribed and ring that bell. Which outcome do you predict? The only certainty now is that Imola's shockwaves will be felt for weeks to come. Stay tuned. We'll be covering every twist and turn of this unfolding story. Enjoy the show.